Hey guys, James Abrinio coming to you from Abrinio Law, your Northern Virginia personal injury and criminal defense law firm. In this video, let's talk about preliminary breath tests in the context of a DUI. What are they? Why are they important? And what are your rights? Stick around and watch the video and check it out. Thanks. Hey guys, James Abrinio coming to you. As you can see today, I'm using a virtual background. I'm a bit of a rush. Wanted to, again, be consistent with these videos as we're doing video YouTube live. So this is my version of a rushed video. So here's my information. If you have any questions, you can reach out www.abriniolaw.com, and there's my email, james@abriniolaw.com. Make sure that you subscribe, guys. We're trying to get some viewers up here. So make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to be constantly updating this channel with useful information about Virginia criminal and personal injury law. So let's talk about preliminary breath tests. What is a preliminary breath test? So if you're charged with a DUI here in Virginia, a preliminary breath test is one of what we call field sobriety tests. It's one of the tests that law enforcement use in order to establish what we call probable cause for an arrest. So under the United States Constitution, under the Virginia Constitution, in order to arrest you for a DUI, the law enforcement need probable cause, which really means you're probably drunk, right? In that term, it can be very legally technical, but we're talking about it in kind of layman's terms. You've demonstrated enough evidence to a reasonable officer under objective circumstances that you're probably drunk and they have cause to arrest you for that DUI. So what other kinds of evidence besides a preliminary breath test is used? And we'll talk about the preliminary breath test specifically in a moment. Things like driving behavior. So if you're seen by law enforcement swerving all over the road, things like slurred speech and smell of alcohol and emission of alcohol when they pull you over. Those are going to be indicators of intoxication that law enforcement is going to use to pump up the reason that they pulled you over. And so in addition to that, they're going to do other things called field sobriety tests. So there's one leg stand, there's a 9-step walk and turn. There's horizontal nystagmus testing, HGN, and these are going to be other pieces of evidence that the prosecutor and law enforcement will try to use to uphold your arrest, to say that it was legally valid. Now, give me just a moment, and because I want to start using a few things in order to help you guys learn as we're going forward. So preliminary breath tests, think of it as the little box that you see on movies where law enforcement has the people blow into, and they blow into it and as they're standing on the side of the road. So preliminary breath test is going to be the box at the side of the road that law enforcement asks you to take. Now, how does that differ from the breath test back at the station? So with typical DUIs that don't involve blood draws, where it's really based upon blood alcohol level, based upon your breath, there's the preliminary breath test you see on the scene on the side of the road, and then there's the formal breath machine over at the station. It's called different things. Different companies make it, ECIR2, Intoxilizer. And what you're required to do really depends on which machine it is. A lot of people think that they're required to take a preliminary breath test. That's actually not the case. You're able to turn down a preliminary breath test, and that should not be used against you. If you do take it, it can be used against you, but it can be used against you in limited ways. So what I wanted to do as we're looking at this, I wanted to go ahead and share my screen so we can show you a couple things. So I'm going to show you the statute that deals with preliminary breath tests. So this is 18.2-267, preliminary analysis of breath to determine alcohol. So what we're talking about here is the PBT. And what I want to point you down to is, let's see, it is subsection E. The results of breath shall not be admitted into evidence in any prosecution for an offense listed in subsection A, which if you look up there, it's really talking about DUIs and DUI-related offenses and the like. So what does this mean when you hear shall not be admitted into any prosecution for an offense listed above? So, James, doesn't that mean that a preliminary breath test can't come in at trial? Well, the way the courts have interpreted the term prosecution, what they found that to mean is a literal trial. Now, if I choose to say to a court, look, I'm moving to suppress your arrest because I don't think that they had probable cause to use it, that's actually, even if it's in the general district court where you're going to be having these things heard at the same time, that's technically a pretrial motion to suppress. And what the courts have said is when they're talking about prosecution, that's actually talking specifically about trial. But a preliminary breath test result can come in at a motion to suppress if you challenge the arrest. So therein lies the issue when we're talking about the preliminary breath test. It won't come into evidence if you don't challenge your arrest. But if you do challenge your arrest, that PBT is going to come into evidence and it's going to be used against you. And if it levels up, then it'll be evidence that a judge can fairly use to establish that there was probable cause for your arrest. Now, when I say it should not be introduced in evidence at trial, I'm talking about if a judge gets it right. Some judges I've seen allow this kind of evidence that should be inadmissible, but for whatever reason it is admissible. But if they abide by the law, a preliminary breath test should not come in at a trial, only to motion suppress hearing. So when you're thinking about that, you've got to be thinking about, are you going to be challenging the arrest? Because if somebody, let's say a scenario where an accused person did nothing else. Let's say they're pulled over for swerving. Law enforcement says that they pulled him over because that's an indication of intoxication. And they said how much he had to drink. And the individual said, I'm not talking to you. I'm asserting my Fifth Amendment. I'm not taking field sobriety tests. But then the officer offers the preliminary breath test and they take that. That alone can be used in addition to the driving behavior to establish a proper arrest. So you just have to be aware of that. And the other thing to be aware of is preliminary breath test is a voluntary thing. You're not required to take a preliminary breath test. And this is sometimes people get confused about the preliminary breath test, as we talked about, versus the breath test back at the station, where under Virginia law, there's actually a requirement that you take a breath test back at the station, or it can have implications on your driver's license. So if you do a refusal of a breath test at the station, that can have certain implications. But people get preliminary breath test confused with the breath test back at the station. And so what I want to be clear is that the PBT is voluntary test. Now, that's also reflected in the statute itself. So I'd like to go back and share the screen again with you once more. Let's see, and we're going to go back to this window. Boom. And so subsection F. Police officers or members of any sheriff's department shall, upon stopping a person specified of having committed offense, advise the person of his rights under this section. And again, this is in reference with subsection E, that it shall not be used in the prosecution. The purposes section, yes, is there. So you have to read E and F together. And what that functionally means is when law enforcement is offering a PBT to you, a preliminary breath test, they're supposed to advise you that, look, this is a voluntary test. It can't be used at trial against you, but if you challenge your arrest, it can be used against you. And some form of that language is supposed to be offered by law enforcement before you take the preliminary breath test. And just to be clear, it says the Inner Sheriff's Department shall. So under Virginia law, but also under standard legal interpretation, the word shall means it has to happen. So that's super important for you to understand when you're thinking about your case and PBTs. Now, let's see, stop that. Now, we look at this, last question is, what are some of the defenses to PBT, the preliminary breath test? The first is, if you took and what I mean by this, if you took a preliminary breath test, how can your attorney try to use the law against that preliminary breath test coming in? So the first thing is not challenge the arrest. So that's an option. If, let's say, you have a defense that doesn't go to the arrest itself, but it goes to the underlying DUI, and challenging the arrest is not going to fly because the PBT, and I just realized that that is needs to be edited to PBT. Sorry about that. So the first thing is, you may choose not to challenge the arrest because, let's say, you blow a 0.10 on the PBT, and let's say it's in general district court. If it's in general district court, that pretrial motion to suppress is actually going to be heard at the same time as the trial, the same judge. So you may not want to challenge the arrest because if that high level PBT comes in, a judge hears that, they may, even if they, first of all, you're not going to win the motion to suppress, but if you lose that and then that amount comes in, that's not really strategically good. So you may keep out the PBT by just not challenging the arrest. That's not always the case. So let's say that you have to challenge it. One of the things that we're looking for is, did the officer read you your right, that this is a voluntary test, that it can't be used in a prosecution, that it can be used in a motion to suppress? If they didn't read that to you, then the argument is that they don't have proper foundation in order for the preliminary breath test to come in. Now, another argument that possibly you may make, or your attorney may make, is the foundation for whether or not the preliminary breath test was properly administered, properly maintained, so it reads accurate results. So under subsection B of 18.2-267, the Department of Forensic Science shall determine the proper method and equipment to be used in analyzing breath samples and taken pursuant to this section, and shall advise the respective police and sheriff departments. So what that means is, there's going to be certain lists of preliminary breath tests that are approved, that if they used a different preliminary breath test, the argument is that it doesn't meet the statute. And then there's also arguments that they have to maintain it according to DFS standards. Now, I don't want to get too technical in this, but that argument has become weakened. There's a new case out, Fitzgerald versus Commonwealth, and it makes it a bit harder to challenge that. But that is an argument to make. So I hope this video was useful. I hope that you learned a little bit more about preliminary breath tests and Virginia DUI law. If you have questions, make sure to reach out to us, and let me get my information back up there. Here's the web address, www.abriniolaw.com, phone number 703-570-4180. Again, subscribe there. I'm trying to get that in there. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Let me also give you another useful URL. So we've created a few landing pages that are super important. So novaduicharge.com, novaduicharge.com. That is our landing page for our DUI practice page, where we've answered a bunch of other questions. So if you have questions, make sure to reach out there and review questions we've answered, and leave some comments, ask some questions. We're going to try to, again, be more formal with, or more regular with, these video live chats. So hope this was useful. Take care, guys. Be safe.